Mediation is definitely necessary. It's a form of conflict resolution that minimizes legal expense, complications, emotions. I've been a trial lawyer for 40 years. I've practiced throughout the United States, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, representing large corporations, small corporations. There is absolutely no question that people are involved in litigation, whether it's a corporation or an individual, are really fearful about the process because they're unfamiliar with it. So the function of the lawyer really should be to minimize that anxiety and yet provide a forum that really can present the position of their client with a third party to attempt to settle it.
In more than 20 years as a trial judge, I learned what every other judge has learned, and that is that courtrooms are not always the most effective forum for resolving disputes. A lot of times, for example, the parties are not really arguing about what the lawsuit is about. I had one case that I mediated recently that involved a father's business and a son's business that were suing one another. And while ostensibly it was about certain business practices, it was really about emotional baggage that came from years earlier. And in a lawsuit, we would apply the Uniform Commercial Code and try and resolve the business dispute, but that really wouldn't solve anything. Somebody would win, somebody would lose, and in most cases, both parties lose because they would be paying so much out and interfering with their businesses so much and not dealing with the real issue that would have come out and did come out in mediation.
When I first started here, I got to experience doing intake, which is hundreds of cases in a year. One of my favorite stories is a gentleman who called us, came through friend of the court, and we were having a great deal of difficulty getting in touch with him. The number that was listed on the file was his neighbor's residence. I was calling and calling and calling and got no return call. Finally, as I was actually preparing to send the case back, saying that we couldn't get contact with this gentleman, I received a phone call. It came up as a payphone, and I answered the phone and said, Oakland Mediation Center, and he said, this is, Mr. So-and-so. What he had explained was that the money that he was giving to his wife for his children had been deemed a gift, as opposed to any sort of child support or anything like that. And what we did is I talked to him. He said that he was living in an abandoned lot in a very urban area close to Oakland Mediation Center, and that he just didn't think that mediation was going to be able to help him. He didn't think anything was going to be able to rectify the situation that he was in. Through the course of talking to him, I understood, more of what his reluctance was, explained to him that if he was in the situation that he was in, he really had nothing to lose. So why not come in and give it a try? He came in, it took us about 3 sessions. About 2 or 3 months later, I received a call from this gentleman, a grown man, 40 years old, hardened from being homeless, living out of a car, losing his children, just having been through an absolutely awful time, crying, saying, thank you, you gave me back my children, you gave me back my family, I now have a life, I now have a home, I now have a family. And that's one of the most rewarding things that you can see happen doing this type of work.
Well, we contacted Oakland Mediation Center several years ago because we were interested in implementing a peer mediation program in our high school. And we were especially attracted to Oakland Mediation Center because they are certified in the nationally recognized Peers Making Peace program. After 1 year, the program reaped amazing results. We reduced our fights by 50%, and we noticed a positive change in the overall school climate. And what we found in our building is that the students that were trained to be mediators were able to span a bridge to sometimes the most difficult group of students that were in conflict with each other, where no adult in the building could. So there are results not only for the student body, but for the overall school building that are incredibly positive.
Well, one of the greatest programs I think that we have at Oakland Mediation Center is what we call the Michigan Special Education Program. And the beauty of this is the Department of Education has provided us with a grant to provide conflict resolution services to the parents and educators, as well as service providers for children that are special needs. So through this program, we provide facilitation services where we actually go in at the school, and when they're designing the student's educational plan, we help to talk about the plan and see what that plan's going to look like. We help to make sure that the team stays on task. As a facilitator and as a mediator in this program myself, I am a trained mediator in special education. One of the greatest things that I was able to see is that when the parties came in and they're extremely contentious, when they're mirroring your actions as a facilitator, in that they're becoming calm themselves, that they are starting to ask questions that allow for the process to be productive. They will ask open-ended questions to find out what the person's needs are. Rather than becoming angry, they sit back and say, well, tell me more about how you're feeling and help me understand where you're coming from. And that's wonderful to see, and that then they become productive in their meeting.
For almost 20 years, Oakland Mediation Center has been helping folks in Oakland County. We've helped over 70,000 people resolve conflict peacefully, but there's so much more for us to do. Michigan has a dropout crisis going on now. Over 30% of our students aren't graduating. If we can impact just 10% of the male population, we can save the state of Michigan $560 million, of which $350 million is criminal costs alone.
Having been the first chair of this organization a long time ago in 1988, it has evolved into a very, very dynamic center. It is probably one of the most influential in the state of Michigan. Not only that, but this program has expanded tremendously to offer services through all sorts of institutions, schools, the Postal Service, probate court, circuit court. And as a result, it has evolved from its initial inception of settling neighborhood disputes into something that really now has a big envelope of the services that are offered to the community. This center, is no question, has a future. They've got imagination, ingenuity, commitment, and drive and spirit. And that achieves and makes for success.